Thank you. Thank you very much, Marcus. And we already have a couple of raised hands, so let's follow the order. The first question is by some data. I will ask you to unmute and please ask your question.
Yeah, so my question is, when you say that the Higgs is protected by the Higgsino mass, not, I mean, if the Higgs mass is protected by the Higgsino mass, that assumes that you're assuming that supersymmetry is not broken, right? If supersymmetry is broken, that argument doesn't hold, right?
Yeah, so when supersymmetry is broken, you have to include the effects of supersymmetry breaking, right? But they come in, the technical term is soft, they come in a soft way. And so that's not a part of the story that I discussed. But the reason that part of the story can even get going is because in the limit of unbroken supersymmetry, you know, you have a, if you want, massless Higgs boson. Okay, and then, but you're right, you definitely have to see that how the effects of supersymmetry breaking work. But the basic idea is that if supersymmetry can be exact, it can also be nearly exact. It can be sort of arbitrarily close to exact. So it's very plausible, and in pretty much all cases that we know, if a symmetry can be exact, it can be a little bit broken, and then the predictions move continuously away from the exact symmetry predictions. And that story does hold in supersymmetry.
For instance, if supersymmetry is broken, then what argument would you give in order to say that it doesn't receive corrections from masses at the Planck scale?
Yes. So you have to assume that the symmetry keeps working all the way up to the Planck scale, which is a big assumption, but it is a logical, rational, coherent assumption. It's very aspirational, yes? But yes, you have to assume that supersymmetry is an exact symmetry of nature. That doesn't bother particle theorists because it's so beautiful that we would love to have supersymmetry.
So the assumption is that it's broken at the TeV scale, but it's still valid at the Planck scale.
The assumption is that it's broken in a way that it gives rise to TeV mass splittings, but at higher scales, it presumably becomes an exact symmetry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. The next question by Chester. I will ask you to unmute.
Hi, Marcus. Thank you for the wonderful talk. So on the mechanisms to enforce anthropic solutions to the hierarchy problem, seems with any model building, you can always find some theory that fits the parameters, but with these in particular, that they will conspire to not be ascertainable, or which model is appropriate not be ascertainable. So do you have any recommendation for which attitude to take towards these kinds of theories?
Well, I mean, I would say that the issues in the anthropic approach is very conceptual. It's not building specific models. It's more, how are you supposed to turn, how can you make, for example, can you make some kind of meaningful probabilistic statements about how likely certain kinds of vacua are? You know, it's really a very, very thorny subject. You know, there are also questions like, if the other universes are very different from ours, they're not just varying a few parameters in the standard model, does this reasoning even make sense? They're very, very basic conceptual questions that I would really, really not want to go into. So I gave a very, very superficial discussion of this to try to convey at least why I think this has some degree of plausibility, but making more precise sense out of it is really very hard.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next in line is Roberto. Go ahead, Roberto.
Okay, thank you, Marcus, for the beautiful talk. I really liked it. I have a question. So you pointed out that if you if you consider the breaking, the spontaneous breaking in the standard model, you by adding 1 degree of freedom, you can unitarize the theory and make it extrapolable to very high energies. you know whether there are examples in which of different patterns of spontaneous breaking, which you need to add more degrees of freedom, more than one?
You mean things that are not compatible with experiments?
Where the minimal number of degrees of freedom that you had to add to unitarize all the scattering amplitudes is not one, but it's greater than one.
I think you can easily make models like that. I mean, even gut models, for example, I think they have more than one, physical Higgs boson, depending on the pattern. I mean, you're not talking about the standard model. You're just talking in complete
some other
generality.
pattern. Yeah, some other.
Yeah, I think with like, I don't know, product gauge groups, for example, would be an easy example. I think if you had, sort of non-minimal breaking, like for example, an SUN breaking not to an adjoint, but to a, breaking by, into several U1s or things like this. I think there's are all over the place, I think.
Okay, good. So I think I would agree. So basically, the standard model is a sort of a special case, right? In which by one you can do the job. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is Gabriele Veneziano. Please go ahead.
1 minute. Okay. Okay. Hi, Marcus.
Hi.
Thank you for a very nice talk. I was wondering, what is your take on the strong CP problem or the theta parameter? Do you consider that rather needing an axion, a new symmetry, a new sector, or also an anthropic fine-tuning?
I'm not aware of any anthropic argument for the theta term, although I'm not aware of many things. I mean, my personal view is absolutely the strong CP problem is a serious conceptual problem with the standard model. I didn't mention it at all, simply for lack of time. It does not have this character that it points to a specific scale, but the axion is a very simple, I would say in my language, an aspirational model. And it's very simple, like the standard model. It adds one new scalar or pseudo-scalar degree of freedom, and it is very beautiful. And there are half of the people, particle physicists under the age of 35, I believe, are working on axion physics. So, it's very much, it's something that is, I think it's very important, and it's getting a lot of attention indeed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
In fact, we will have a full workshop, a full program on axions, a 7-week program in 2023. So you're right. Yeah.
Okay, so I see Lorenzo that wants to ask one question.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Marcus, for the talk. It was very nice. Really liked it as well. I kind of wanted to follow up the question Gabriele Veneziano just asked, meaning that as like you, I'm not aware of any anthropic solution for strong CP. So this fact, could this fact spoil possible anthropic solutions for the Higgs mass and the cosmological constant, or you can take them to be completely unrelated?
Well, I presented the anthropic, anthropics as though it should be the solution to everything, but it doesn't have to be the solution to everything. I mean, the idea that, so it could be that, the anthropic mechanisms do act in our universe, and they explain some things, but not others. Some things have a more, particle physics-y explanation in terms of symmetries, because symmetries could be there as well as the anthropic mechanisms, right? So I wouldn't say that, this would be an argument against anthropics working anywhere in the universe. I am made profoundly uneasy by anthropics because I fear that it might operate in our universe. And so it might limit the scope of our, reasoning about certain questions. But the axion, from that point of view, the axion or the strong CP problem is a good problem to work on as a particle physicist, because there doesn't seem to be an anthropic excuse for it. And so that is a place where perhaps it makes sense to put your particle physics prowess, particle theory chops to use to try and understand it.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so since we had already several questions from Marcus, I think we can start the final discussion where there are questions for all the speakers. So in case you want to ask a question to Marcus, of course, go ahead, but also feel free to raise your hand if you have a question for the previous two speakers. So let's continue. The next one is David. Okay, please go ahead.
So Marcus arrived at the following conclusion, that if the standard model disagrees with experiment conducted at the TeV level, then there's new physics at the TeV level. And that seems to me to be a very reasonable conclusion. But we're living in a different world now from what we were when the aspirants of supersymmetry hoped to find new physics because of a theological argument about hierarchy and fine-tuning. Those problems don't exist in the standard model because it's a renormalizable quantum field theory. And the one thing I learned about a renormalizable quantum field theory 50 years ago is that it predicts everything except the terms in the Lagrangian, which have to be taken from experiment. So it makes no contribution in a renormalizable quantum theory to talk about a contribution to the Higgs mass, that the Higgs mass is taken from experiment. What was it that dragged people into the metaphysics of fine-tuning and hierarchy, when the experimental question that's answered at ATLAS and CMS is the renormalizable quantum field theory of the strong interaction in agreement with your experiments?
Well, I think, as I said, I don't agree that it's metaphysics, because as soon as we go beyond the standard model, as soon as we have anything beyond the standard model, inflation, grand unification, something that solves the strong CP problem, anything, we will start to get these contributions. Those can be renormalizable theories if you like renormalizability, but those theories will have huge contributions to the Higgs mass that need to be fine-tuned away. So it's aspirational theory. We haven't seen those things. You could doubt whether they're there. Maybe there's some other way of doing physics, but I would still definitely call that physics. That's what dragged us into this, is the idea that it seems to be a need for physics beyond the standard model at much higher energy scales, okay? But that would require this enormous fine-tuning. Even in renormalizable theories, it has nothing to do with
So let me clarify your claim. You're saying that you could have a renormalizable quantum field theory in which, when one was actually doing practical calculations, in dimensional regularization, you would actually need to run your computer program at far more precision of digits.
Exactly. It's like this calculation. I was hunting for this.
No, but please don't go there. We're talking about, does this argument say there must be new physics at the TeV scale? Suppose it was at 1000 TeV, then I wouldn't have to do fine tuning in my calculations like this, would I?
Well, you would have less tuning. It's a sliding scale, right? Do you call a 1% cancellation fine tuning? How about 10 to the minus 3?
It's not a cancellation. 4? It's not a cancellation. I'm not a cancellation of the Higgs mass. I'm taking my Higgs mass from experiment, and I'm doing what I was told to do by Freeman Dyson.
Right. This is the number from experiment, but in your theory, it's the sum of two terms. This is from experiment, but in your theory, it's a sum of two finite terms that cancel to 10 digits or 30 digits or whatever. So you can have a philosophical idea that this is not bad, but I've just tried to explain why this causes concern for people.
Okay.
If you really had this in your computer code, you would have to calculate this, and you were trying to calculate this as a function of your inputs, you would have to calculate this to 30 digits to get the order of magnitude of the experimental prediction right.
But at the end of the day, the job of perturbative quantum field theory is to predict relationships between experimentally measured quantities like cross sections and branching ratios and so on and so forth, using the experimental input for the renormalized parameters. So I still don't understand what you mean by you're saying you're tuning the Higgs mass. I take the Higgs mass to be
I think you're just taking a very Baconian attitude.
Yes.
You're just saying, all I see is what I observe. I don't think about how it's calculated. And you may be right. People have speculated that maybe God doesn't calculate like this, okay? And by God, I mean, of course, the universe, right? We don't know. But I think this is a kind of philosophical discussion. I'm not trying to tell you that you should believe this religiously, but I am trying to explain to you why I and many other people are worried about this.
Yes, and of course, your point about astrophysics and other sources of experimental input is very important. But I said to people,
I'm sorry. We need to proceed because there are other people in line. And
thank you. I spoke too much.
No, don't worry.
Thanks for the question. It's a good question.
It's good that we have so many questions. It's a great discussion. So we need to give the opportunity to everybody to ask. And I renew the invitation to ask questions to all of the speakers, not just the last one, since we are in the final part of the discussion. The next one is Mike. Please go ahead. We cannot hear you very well. Sorry, Mike. Let's try. Your internet connection is not stable. So let's try again in a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I give the opportunity to sorry. Okay. Sorry, Mike. We still here. Okay. Some data, please.
Yeah. So regarding the previous point that that was being raised, I think the issue is that if you have a classical theory like the standard model, and then you go about computing loop corrections and so on and so forth, then you'll inevitably land up with some problems like this. But if you start out by saying that you have an effective field theory and it's exact at the tree level, because effective field theories essentially encapsulate the vertices of the effective field theory, then essentially encapsulate all the loop corrections to all orders. And you don't need any loop corrections when you are considering effective field theories, then in principle, the problem is solved, because then you can say that whatever you get from experiments for the masses is the Higgs mass. So there are no loop corrections in an effective field theory. That would resolve the problem, I think.
John, do you want to take this one? Or do you want me?
John, you're muted. We cannot hear you.
Sorry, my attention wandered. Could you please repeat the question?
John, maybe in the interest of time, I'll just take it. I mean,
yeah,
I want to just correct one technical point that you said. You said that loops are not important in effective theories. That's absolutely not correct. Loops are very important in effective theories. I think I've kind of tried to explain this point of fine-tuning as best I can. I know that there are people who are skeptical of it. There may be reasons to be skeptical of it, but I'm going to suggest that we move on, and maybe we'll get more variety of questions for also for other people. And let me just say, I'd be happy to discuss this with you offline. If you want to send me an email, if you want to talk about it, I'd be happy to talk about it more.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Marcus. Thank you very much. We can continue. And the next one is Misha Shaposhnikov. Please go ahead.
Could I just say one word on this question of fine tuning?
Sure, sure.
So my point of view is that it's a symptom of a deeper problem with the theory, that if you want to embed it in a deeper theory, that you're going to find some sort of parametric instability. And way back when, I was rather skeptical about the quadratic divergence of the Higgs being a big problem, but I did a calculation with Mary Gaillard that when you embed the standard model in a ground unified theory, then you change the parameters of the ground unified theory by infinitesimal amount, you get an enormous shift in the mass of the Higgs. And that's the sort of thing that I mean, that if you try to embed a quote unquote fine-tuned theory in a bigger theory, you have problems.
I completely agree with that. I think it's another way of saying what I've been trying to say, perhaps much more succinctly.
Okay, well, if we are not allowed to discuss a hierarchy, well, I should say that I fully support what David said, and I disagree with John, and I disagree with Marcus. That depends on the way how you compute the things. And one way you compute the thing, you see necessity of computation, you do the computation. In another way, you don't see that. But okay, since let me ask you some other thing. So you mentioned that you need some new particles for cosmological phenomenon, but I would say that that's not true. For dark matter, you don't need heavy particles. For baryogenesis, you don't need heavy particles. For inflation, you don't need heavy particles. So I'm kind of wondering how much weight you are put into that.
Is this a question for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very well aware of your work on this subject. What in my language, I would say you would have an aspirational theory that tries to explain new physics in terms of new light particles, okay, which is very interesting. And I don't have any problem with that. I didn't mean to say that anything that I'm saying here is a theorem. I think, though, that I think actually, one needs to explore all possible ideas. So I don't have any. I think that's great.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, let me just say though, I do think I mean, ultimately, the ultimate sort of white elephant is quantum gravity. And the only thing that we know that looks halfway reasonable to incorporate quantum gravity is string theory, which definitely requires many, many, many heavy states. So there's another reason, it's not a theorem again, but there's another reason to believe, even if every detail of your model would be confirmed, I think a lot of people, including myself, would still think there would have to be something else for that reason. But again, that's not a theorem.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you'll find a way to do quantum gravity with only light particles.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. We have 10 more minutes, after which we have to close the discussion session, but I see more people in line, so we can continue. Michael, please go ahead.
You're muted.
Michael, you're still muted.
There we go. I got unmuted and I switched computers, so it'll be better. Higgs is, of course, very useful for giving them various quarks their masses. However, and for adjusting the W mass to be right. But the weak interactions are based on a non-abelian engaged theories. So non-abelian engaged theories confine. So a massless W and Z is in fact incompatible with field theory. That's just a comment.
With QC, yeah, well,
either John or you.
Yeah. Right. I mean, depends on the interactions, right? For example, if you had if you had QCD with many quarks, it would run to a fixed point, and you would, in some sense, have massless quarks. You would have a conformal fixed point.
But not for,
yes. But
Not for the
yeah.
weak interactions. I mean, for the weak interactions, we have a few, we don't lose confinement. It will confine, and therefore you cannot have a massless W.
As long as we're being counterfactual, I could just add a boatload of new leptons and then it would be fine. So it loses asymptotic freedom. But yeah, you're right. If it's asymptotically free, then it will presumably confine. We don't know for sure, but most likely a chiral gauge theory, we don't know for sure, but we think it probably confines. I don't know.
Well, there are the old papers which show that you would get a mass anyway from the quarks, but that's ancient history. The Higgs is much more useful. Okay, that was my comment.
Okay.
Very good. So I think we have time for one last question before we close, and the question will be by Alexander.
Yeah, thank you, Francesco. Yes, it's not about fine-tuning. Well, I disagree with much what was being said, but it's for Marumi. I hope he's still there. Right now, experimentally, what we are basically exploring is really the minimum of the Higgs potential and immediately around it. Now, I mean, I'm already older, in the late 30s when high luminosity LHC will have finished. How much will we have learned about the potential? To what extent? I mean, quantify it, please. For instance, the triple couplings, how will they be accessible in the high luminosity LHC, and to what precision will they be accessible?
Yes, so I'm still here. Hi, Alexander, thanks for the question. So what we learn about the Higgs potential, as you said, HLHC will have access to di-Higgs production at the level of 5 sigma, meaning around 20% precision on di-Higgs. And I thought I had a slide on that, but maybe do you want me to share it? I can show it. But
the fine tuning is in your way.
no, but let me tell you. It's okay. Let me tell you. The precision is about that we've calculated so far is about 50% on the trilinear coupling. Okay, these. On the quartic coupling is at HLHC is completely impossible as far as we believe. Even FCCHH will have a hard time. If we go to the 100 kilometer HH, we would go to a few percent level precision on the trilinear coupling. We would not know much more. I don't think we have access to the absolute value of the minimum, the constant term. But this is what we would know, which is of course fantastic, and we think we can do better than that, better than 50% on the trilinear coupling.
Great, something to look forward to. Thank you.
And can I take advantage of? I was wondering because I thought about the question by David Broadhurst. I mean, I thought that the way that Riccardo Barbieri put it on the paper I posted to everyone was very convincing in terms of the running of the Higgs mass. Was that you do see that if you have any state that at a higher mass that couples to the Higgs, then what's going to happen is you have a huge jump in the running of the Higgs mass, and so it's effective. It's on the running. It's not just a correction that you could renormalize away, right?
Yeah, thanks Marumi for sharing the paper. You put the link in the chat, so. That's a paper by Riccardo Barbieri that, of course, explains the issue very well. So I think we can close here. I thank all the three speakers for the fantastic talks they gave, and also all of you who contributed to the discussion. And I leave the floor to Stefania for the official closing of the
official closing. Yes, I'm very happy for this. For the way that things went in this special edition of the Tea Break. We just have the historical overview, but also a very, very rich discussion concerning the trilinear. I hope that things will be better. LHC will be able to make possible the impossible, as you said in your talk. So I really thank all the speakers and the participants. for attending this this afternoon for us and morning for the others. This special event closes the second series of the GGI Tea Breaks, which in my opinion has been a great success. We had colloquia spanning on a lot of arguments which are among the hottest topics in theoretical physics, with speakers which are among the greatest experts in the field. And this is the right occasion to thank the organizing committee of the GGI Tea Breaks, which made all this possible. So let me really thank Roberto Contino, Guido D'Amico, Francesco Deramo, Valentina Forini, David Marzocca, Domenico Orlando, Alessandro Sfondrini, and Andrea Tesi. I really thank them for the great collaboration with me, and I hope to see you again, okay, on this in other occasion. So I wish you a great summer and happy summer too. Bye to everyone, and thank you.
Okay, grazie, grazie.
Grazie
Ciao.
a voi, grazie a voi tutti.
Grazie.
Ciao.
Grazie mille, ciao.
Grazie, ciao.
Ciao.
E grazie a Stefania. Thank you, Stefania. Since
No, no,
thank
it's okay.
you.
we should also thank you.
Okay, thanks.